April 16, 1947. The gates of Auschwitz concentration camp opened once more time, but this time for a very different purpose. Rudolf Höss, the man who had commanded this factory of death, was returning to the place where over 1 million people had been murdered under his command. But he was not returning as the Commandant. He was returning to die. The former prisoners of Auschwitz had demanded this. They wanted Höss to face his final moments in the very camp where he had orchestrated unimaginable horror. And on this cold April morning, their wish would be granted. This is the story of the vengeful execution of Rudolf Höss. To understand the execution, we must first understand the man and the crimes that led him to the gallows. But first, if you want to support our channel and never miss historical stories like this, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. Your support helps us bring more content straight to you. Rudolf Höss was not born a monster. He was born in 1901 in Baden-Baden, Germany, to a strict Catholic family. His father wanted him to become a priest, but the young Höss had different plans. World War I changed everything. At just 14 years old, he lied about his age and joined the German army, serving in combat and earning the Iron Cross. After the war, Höss found purpose in Adolf Hitler's Nazi Party. Joining in 1922, his loyalty was absolute, and his willingness to use violence was immediate. In 1923, he participated in the brutal murder of a schoolteacher named Walter Kato. Höss and his accomplices beat Kato to death in a forest. He was caught and sentenced to 10 years in prison, but served only 5. After his release, Höss married and had 5 children, working as a farmer. But his devotion to National Socialism never wavered. In 1934, Heinrich Himmler personally recruited him into the SS. Höss began his career in the concentration camp system at Dachau. On May 1, 1940, Rudolf Höss was appointed commandant of a newly established concentration camp in occupied Poland. Built around former army barracks in the town of Auschwitz, the Germans called it Auschwitz. When Höss arrived at Auschwitz, it was a small camp designed for about 10,000 prisoners. But Höss had darker ambitions. He was determined to create the most efficient concentration camp in the Nazi system. Höss moved his entire family into a villa next to the camp. While he oversaw mass murder during the day, he returned home at night to have dinner with his wife and children. His daughter would later recall that her father was kind and gentle with the family, a disturbing contrast to the monster within the camp walls. Under Höss's command, Auschwitz expanded into a massive complex covering 40 square kilometers, with 3 main sections: Auschwitz I, the administrative center, Auschwitz to Birkenau, the extermination camp, and Auschwitz through Monowitz, the forced labor camp. The true transformation came in summer 1941. Heinrich Himmler summoned Höss to Berlin for a secret meeting. Himmler informed him that Hitler had ordered the final solution: the systematic extermination of all Jews in Europe. Auschwitz had been chosen as the primary killing center. Why Auschwitz? It had excellent railway connections for efficient transport of victims. It was isolated enough to maintain secrecy, and it had enormous space to expand killing operations to an industrial scale. Höss accepted the assignment without hesitation. He was excited by the challenge. He began experimenting with different methods of killing, testing poison gases on Soviet prisoners of war. During Höss's time as commandant, at least 1.1 million people were murdered at Auschwitz. Most were Jews, but victims also included Poles, Soviet prisoners, Roma, homosexuals, and political prisoners. Höss was obsessed with efficiency. The process became a grotesque assembly line of death. Trains arrived at Birkenau, and prisoners were immediately divided. Those fit for work were sent to labor camps. The elderly, children, and those unable to work were sent directly to the gas chambers. Victims were told they were going to take showers. They were stripped of their belongings, then herded into large rooms. The doors were sealed, and Zyklon B pellets were dropped through vents. Within 20 minutes, everyone inside was dead. As the Soviet Red Army advanced in early 1945, the Nazis frantically destroyed evidence. On January 27, 1945, Soviet troops liberated Auschwitz, finding approximately 7,000 survivors and mountains of evidence. To Rudolf Höss had gone into hiding with false papers under the name Franz Lang, working as a farm laborer. For almost a year, He evaded capture while Nuremberg trials prosecuted major Nazi war criminals. But British intelligence was hunting him. In March 1946, they tracked him down. When soldiers arrived, Höss attempted to bite a cyanide capsule, but they stopped him. The Commandant of Auschwitz was finally in custody. In April 1946, Höss testified at Nuremberg as a witness. He calmly described Auschwitz operations in chilling detail, estimating 2.5 million deaths. He explained the selection process, gassing procedures, and body disposal with mechanical detachment. The courtroom sat in stunned silence. He showed no remorse, no emotion. After Nuremberg, Höss was handed to Polish authorities. Poland wanted to try him for crimes on Polish soil. The trial began in Warsaw. On March 11, 1947, survivors testified about the horrors they endured. Höss sat impassively through it all. On April 2, 1947, Rudolf Höss was found guilty of crimes against humanity and sentenced to death by hanging. The day after sentencing, former Auschwitz prisoners submitted a petition to the court. Their request was simple but powerful. Rudolf Höss should be executed at Auschwitz itself. In the camp where he had committed his crimes, the survivors wanted Höss to face his final moments in a place where over 1 million people had faced theirs. They wanted him to walk the same paths that countless victims had walked to their deaths. They wanted him to die where he had created hell on earth. The Polish authorities agreed. The execution would take place at Auschwitz, on the campgrounds. The symbolism was clear. This was justice delivered at the scene of the crime. The execution was initially scheduled for April 14th, but was postponed. Authorities feared local residents might try to lynch Höss before the official execution. The date was moved to April 16, 1947. German prisoners of war were ordered to construct the gallows near the former home where Höss had lived with his family, just outside the crematorium of Auschwitz. On the morning of April 16, 1947, Rudolf Höss was transported back to Auschwitz. He arrived at 8 a.m., more than 2 years after liberation. The place that had been his domain was now his execution ground. Höss was taken to the building that had housed his administrative offices. He requested coffee, which was provided. He drank it calmly, without visible fear or anxiety. After finishing, he was escorted to Block 11, the death block. Block 11 was where prisoners had been tortured and executed during the camp's operation. Thousands had been held in its cells, awaiting their fate. Now Höss himself was placed in one of these cells. According to witnesses, Höss remained composed during these final hours. He did not pray, did not ask for forgiveness, did not express remorse. He simply waited. At 10 a.m., the cell door opened. It was time. Rudolf Höss was led out into the courtyard. His hands were handcuffed behind his back. A small group of witnesses had gathered Polish officials, former prisoners, journalists, and the execution team. Höss walked calmly through the camp, showing no fear or hesitation. Some former prisoners who witnessed this walk said Höss seemed almost at peace. Others saw his calmness as further evidence of his complete lack of conscience. The procession reached the gallows. Executioners helped him climb onto the stool placed over the trapdoor. His bound hands made it difficult to maintain balance. A Catholic priest, Father Władysław, approached and offered final prayers. Höss did not refuse, though witnesses said he showed little interest. The prosecutor stepped forward and read the sentence aloud. Commandant of Auschwitz, found guilty of crimes against humanity, sentenced to death by hanging. The executioner placed the noose around Höss' neck. At exactly 10:08 a.m., the executioner kicked away the stool. Rudolf Höss dropped through the trapdoor. The rope tightened. His body convulsed briefly, then hung still. Swaying slightly in the morning breeze, Father Lahn began reciting prayers for the condemned. The witnesses stood in silence, watching the man who had orchestrated over 1 million deaths now hanging lifeless. A physician monitored Höss's vital signs. The minutes passed slowly. At 10:21 a.m., 13 minutes after the trapdoor opened, the doctor pronounced Rudolf Höss dead. The execution was over. The Commandant of Auschwitz had faced his final judgment in the very place where he had decided who would live and who would die. After death, Höss's body was cremated and his ashes scattered in an unknown location. There would be no grave, no memorial. Rudolf Höss would leave no physical trace, just as he had tried to leave no trace of his victims. Today, Auschwitz stands as a museum and memorial. The gallows where Rudolf Höss was executed still stands, a reminder of justice served. But no punishment could truly match his crimes. The execution brought his life to an end, but could not undo the damage or bring back the million lives destroyed. The gallows at Auschwitz remind us, those who create hell on earth will ultimately answer for their crimes. Thanks for watching. If you found this video informative, please subscribe to our channel for more historical content. Remember to like and share this video. Until next time,